Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our workshop series today. My name is Audrey Eloquent, and I work with SmartDog Services, and we'll be walking through more of a workshop for Oracle's cloud infrastructure and using it as a good way to test drive not only the functionality, but also the interface and how you can utilize this cloud trial to take advantage of some of the options to then use cloud for your most demanding workloads. So with us today, we have Sushil Motwani, who is our Director of Cloud Infrastructure, and he has spent many, many years in the Oracle space and from both the technical and also the functional side for EBS. And so today he will be walking us through initially an Oracle Cloud Infrastructure interview, and then he'll walk us into more of a hands-on lab that will include options such as signing into your console, creating a VCN, etc., and then also bridging more into the gateway of launching a virtual machine. So that said, I'd like to welcome Sushil Motwani.
Good morning, folks. Good afternoon, depending on where you are in the country. Thank you very much for taking the time to join. I am making a presumption here that each one of you have created a trial account or already have an OCI account that you can play with. The workshop will definitely have a hands-on portion of it. If you are not able to do the hands-on, you can actually, I'm going to be doing exactly the same steps that are expected. And at the end of it, if for some reason you do not have an account, this recording, we're going to record this presentation, and you could walk through it and do it yourself at your own time in the future. But if you do it right now, you'll be, it's a good time to get an idea of how long it takes for you to do it, even on a trial account, and how quick it is. Thank you again for joining, and I'm going to start right now. So this workshop is part of this EBS Summit series that we've been doing, where we've been talking about multiple benefits of being on EBS today, and the fact that EBS support has been extended all the way to at least 2030 by Cliff Godwin from Oracle. We had Cliff Godwin kick off this series on March 16th, and we still have about 3 to 3.5 months worth of workshops that are still workshops/presentations that are remaining as part of our schedule. So please feel free to join each one of those as we have these bi-weekly meetings. So today I'm going to start on just giving you a slight overview on what the OCI, OCI is, especially from a networking point of view, because most of the people who are doing the actual work on this today are former DBAs and are not network administrators. So what actually happens is, I remember when I started working on Oracle Cloud, I really got completely confused with terms like virtual cloud network, routing tables, security rules, and CIDR. What is your CIDR? And I had absolutely no idea what each one of these terms are. And it turns out to be that it's not as complicated as it seems to be, but until you actually do hands-on and work on a project and set up the network, that's when you realize, oh, it's not so bad. It doesn't, it's just that you have to sometimes learn something more than what you actually know, because it's totally different from being a DBA where you created databases and you created applications. So I'm going to spend time on that aspect more on the presentation, and then we'll go directly to the workshop. And on the workshop, we will do 2 things today, if possible. One is we will try to create an actual Linux environment, and you'll be able to log into your Linux environment. And once you're there, and you'll be able to see that you can actually root access through that environment, and you can do pretty much anything from running yum scripts or whatever against that environment. Now, if time permits, we will go and again run something known as a database cloud service, where we will do one more workshop where we will actually create a database using the database cloud service, and that will also automatically create a Linux environment in the backend for you. So those are the 2 things we are planning to do. And what I want to show you through this whole process is it's actually very easy. And, compared to what it was before, if you're on-premise, how difficult it is to just get yourself, even have an environment to start installing. So this is my profile. I don't want to go too much into it. The only thing I can tell you is that I have been working with Oracle technologies for 24 plus years, and that's all I've really done over the last 25 years. So I started off as an Oracle DBA, moved on to an applications DBA, then I did middleware related stuff, and eventually now I'm working on the Oracle Cloud, and I'm helping existing Oracle customers who use any of the Oracle technologies and helping them make the right decisions on what their future infrastructure should look like. So from an architecture perspective, Oracle has something that they have created what is known as regions. And it's something like a data center that Amazon or Google has, but this is more, enterprise level, much more, high availability centric, and it helps you from a perspective of how Oracle has designed these networks to help with different things like whether it's high availability, disaster recovery, etc. So Oracle has so far what is known as 4 regions that they have created around the world, and there are probably another 5 or 6 that will come up in the next couple of years. One of the regions is in Phoenix, Arizona. There's one region in Ashburn, Virginia, which is near Washington, D.C. We have one in Frankfurt, Germany. These were the 3 that were created initially within a period of, I would say, 2 months. They got up and running last year, in the middle of last year summer, and it was announced during the Oracle Open World. They opened up the London region at the early part of this winter. So now we have 4 regions. Now, why do they call it regions? Because what Oracle does, it creates 3 data centers within a region that are at least 50 miles away from each other, and they call those data centers as availability domains. So you have in the Phoenix region, you'll have 3 data centers, each interconnected with each other. As you can see, the speed that has been set up between different ADs in a region, less than 5 millisecond, connection speed between, say, availability domain 2 and 3, or between 1 and 2 or 1 and 3. So it is extremely fast. And then if you are having hosts running against any one of those, then you get less than 100 microseconds of latency within the hosts right over here. So this is extremely high level, enterprise level latency. So, it's almost like running your own data center between that you are running on your on-premise, but with much better infrastructure today, latest and greatest infrastructure. And, at the same time, giving you some of the benefits that you will get when it comes to disaster recovery. For example, you can have a database running on your production database running on availability domain 1, and you could have your disaster recovery running at a data center that's 50 miles away and give you almost 0 latency between between your primary and your standby database. Now, there's also disaster recovery available across regions. But again, with that, you are, again, the speed and latency is very, very high. But, if it's absolutely needed to have your disaster recovery 3,000 miles apart, then absolutely you could create your disaster recovery environment in one in Phoenix and then the disaster in Ashburn, etc. You won't get 5 milliseconds, but it is still in seconds right now. So it is pretty quick. And if you want it faster, then Oracle has partnerships with high-speed fast connect providers like Megaport and Equinix, for example, that will give you even faster connection between data centers. In fact, if you use those third-party providers, then you can also have interconnectivity to the different clouds like Amazon and Google and Microsoft as needed. Now, one of the things that, again, Oracle is doing with their OCI. OCI is nothing but Cloud version 2.0. There was an original version of the cloud called OCI Classic. This presentation is purely based on OCI. And they came up with what is very similar to what is called as a bare metal platform, where the performance that you get is very similar to what you would if you were running on a bare metal server. Now, you can choose when you buy services through the cloud to actually have a complete server dedicated to yourself, or even if you have VMs, the way the networking has been set up, you do not face the issues that you would face with other cloud providers related to crowdy neighbors or any one of these things. You have your own virtual network that's created for you. So when we create a network, it will be primarily created for the customer that's using it. So you do not share the network with the other customers. So that is one of the benefits that you get. And because of that, you can run anywhere from big data workloads, your Oracle database workloads, of course, any other kind of different workloads you want to run. And it gives you various services across compute, storage, and networking in the OCI. This is your basic architecture within each domain. So this is a little bit of the technical side of what, within the region, what exactly do you get? I've already spoken to some of those, the latency and the bandwidth that is there. And similarly, within an availability domain, you get very fast, high scale network ports. And you pretty much are able to go from between compute and storage at a maximum of 2 hops. And as you can see over here, the diagram very clearly states that you have your own virtual network that's created for you. So even if you have VMs created and there's another customer that has its own VM, they will have their own network connected, and then they will eventually go to the physical network into their own availability domains as needed. So there is no sharing of resources between multiple customers. So I will talk about some of these terms today when we do the workshop, and these are the terms that we'll be using when we start installing stuff on the Oracle Cloud. So VCN is a virtual cloud network, which is basically your own network as part of your own data center. So if you have a data center today, if you want to use the same, set of IP addresses that are in conjunction to the IP addresses that you use today. So for example, if you use 10.0.0 and you want to use a 10.1 something for your servers on the cloud, you can absolutely choose what range of data of addresses you want, and they will be part of your own data center. And then you set up the rules that they communicate with each other as part of your own data center. So there is a DNS functionality that comes up with the cloud. Now, within these regions, you can create what is known as there's a region and then there's availability domain. So you can create subnets. Subnets are within a region, and you can have subnets going across availability domains as needed. Right? Subnets are availability domain specific, while you have you can create multiple servers across regions and have them from a how do you call that, disaster recovery perspective, connect across multiple subnets in 2 different availability domains. You can create security lists. So by default, when you create all the environments on the cloud, they do not connect, they do not talk to each other. So by everything is by default denied. So the only way for us is we set up security rules to allow port 22, for example, to communicate from this instance to this instance, so that you could run an SSH against these 2 environments. If there's a database running on this and an application running on this, you can open up a port 1521 if that's your listener port, and that's how you work. And so one of the things that with a deny by default, the security is kept at a very high level, and it is easy to set up your security rules as needed. Route tables is a set of route which allows your IP network traffic to be directed to your destination. Now, if you create what is known as a subnet, there are 2 types of subnets that Oracle allows. One is called as a private subnet, and one is called as a public subnet. If you create a public subnet, that allows those servers running on the public subnet to access the internet. So that goes through what is known as an internet gateway, and you need to create an internet gateway as part of your creation of your network. And we will be creating one today as part of the workshop. Now, if you have your own servers running in your own data center, then you will create what is known as a DRG, and your equipment that you have at your own data center will connect through the DRG through IPsec VPN, so that they become part of your own network. Okay, so this is the whole diagram that it is from a virtual cloud network. And now we will start actually the workshop in a couple, after this slide, where there is some. If you do not know what CIDRs are, please put that on the question, and then I will go into more details with what CIDRs are. If not, I'm going to assume that each one of you know what a CIDR is. It took me about, I would say, a couple of weeks to understand what really a CIDR is, but it's nothing but a range of IP addresses that you want to allow your data center to be part of, that is being used as part of your data center access. Okay, and one of the things that is required is each instance that comes, when you create it, will automatically have a private IP, because if it's on a private subnet, and if it is running on a public subnet, it will also get a public IP address. You're allowed to create 10 VCN per region. You're allowed to create more, but then you need to ask Oracle to increase the limit as needed. The same thing about the number of subnets per VCN. Okay, and then typically people may need more than 10 subnets. If they do, you can always ask for those. And one of the best things about this one is you can have your own IP addresses, which I spoke about in the earlier part. So this is what we're actually going to do, is we're going to create this cloud network, and like you to, if you haven't got onto the cloud account, please log into your cloud account, and we can start working on creating an environment for you on the cloud right now. So typically when you get to the cloud account, this is the page that you are encountering, and it has changed yesterday, where these all menu items that you see right now over here were actually on top over here as tabs, but now those tabs have gone away, and Oracle changes its page every 2 to 3 weeks. So there is no demo that you give that has been recorded 3 weeks ago would probably be the same, because the screens would have changed. So this change yesterday, I noticed it when I was getting ready for this OCI workshop. So I said, that's good. If it had happened today, then I would have been like, what's going on? So I did my own internal demo before I got ready for today's presentation. So as over here, you can see there are different tabs: identity, compute, containers, database. The first thing that we need to do is create what is known as your compartment. When you create your own compartment, at that point of time, you can create your VCNs within that compartment. Now, as far as compartments are concerned, let me open up. Compartments are created through the identity management, where you go here and you create a compartment. So for example, at SmartDog, depending on what people are doing, each person has created their own compartment, so they can work within their own compartment. And then within that compartment, I can create multiple virtual clouds networks as needed. So I have one for myself called SmartDog_Sushil. But if you haven't created a compartment, the first thing that you need to do is go and create a compartment name. You do not need to provide a description if you do not want to, and then say create compartment, because you need a compartment in which you do your work, in which you create your virtual cloud network. So that's one of the first things you need to do. So if you haven't created a compartment, please go ahead and do that. It takes less than 30 seconds to do. Once that is done, then I will start working on the next one. So once the compartments are done, the next thing now we have to do is start creating a virtual cloud network. So I have one virtual cloud network running right now, but I'm actually going to be creating a new virtual cloud network within my own VCN, within my own compartment. I've said over here, as you can see, I'm specifying which compartment that I'm going to be creating this VCN in. So I say create VCN. I provide the compartment which I'm going to create it. I say demo. When I say demo, now by default, it may only create a VCN, and then you got to go and set up your own network as needed. And that's what most customers will typically do. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm actually also going to have it create the subnets for me and everything else as needed. So what it's going to do is it's going to create a virtual cloud network with the name demo with the CIDR of 10.0.0./16. When I say /16, that means I'm allowing these two digits to have 0 to 256, the last two digits, and 0 to 256 on these two digits. So my IP address range would be 10.0.0.0 to 10.0.256.256. So we get 256 times 256 different hosts that we can have. Now, if you know you're not going to have that many hosts, you can actually select the CIDR as needed, depending on what your maximum number of hosts running against that virtual cloud network would be. It also goes and creates an internet gateway for us by default, because I have used this network related resources. Now, you could always go ahead and do this first and then come back and create your own subnets later. You can delete these default subnets that it creates, and you will have your internet gateway and all those things created for you. But then the only thing that you're really not creating is the internet gateway and the default route table, which is very easy to create. So Oracle will create this for you. It will create an internet route gateway. It will create the default route table, and it is creating 3 subnets for me. All 3 of them it's creating as a public subnet that is allowing access to any hosts that are running against this subnet, access to the internet. So that means you can run Yum against it, get packages, run Firefox browser that is available on Linux. Or if you install a Windows box, then you could run Internet Explorer against that server on which the subnet is running against. So whatever is there would be there. By default, when you create a Windows machine, it gives you Internet Explorer, as you all know. You can always go and install Google Chrome or a browser of your choice that you need on a Windows server. So as you can see over here, it creates a CIDR for each one of the subnets as 10.0.0/24, which means 256 IP addresses for this subnet, 256 IP addresses for this subnet, and 256 IP addresses for this subnet, with 10.0.2, 10.0.1, and 10.0.0. So the only thing that would be different in each one of them would be the 4th digit for each subnet. So when you create a virtual cloud network here, it creates all these different subnets for you. So now as you can see, it was that quick. It created your VCN, it created the internet gateway, it created my route table, and created the subnet. So I will show you what exactly it has done. So now if you click on, as you see over here, it has created my VCN and it has created the demo VCN as needed. So you click on the demo VCN and you can see it has created 3 subnets internally over here, and it has created a route table. And if you click on this route table, it's showing you that it's giving you access to the internet for all IP addresses that are existing in the world. That means there's nothing blocked if you want to access outward. And also it has created security lists, and in security lists, it has created, that you can access any website. And also if you want to go and open up create a new instance, you'll be able to use SSH. That means you can log into that instance if you create a new instance in this particular subnet, because the security list is attached to a subnet. So if you want only a certain set of IP addresses, you can change this rule that I don't want every single one to use host number 22. You can change it right here. Okay, and obviously from egress perspective, allow traffic within all the, it's by default saying 0/0. So, any IP address that you want to use, you could use. That's basically what it comes down to. So now once you have created your subnets, you have created your route table, security lists, and your internet gateway has been created, now you are ready to install your first environment. So we go back to here, we go into compute. So over here, I'm going to create a new instance. So when you create a new instance now, you can specify whatever name you want to give on the instance. If I say demo, now I can specify which availability domain I want this to be. Since I created 3 subnets, in each one of them in the 3 separate availability domains. So if I select number 2, then it will create my demo instance in availability domain 2 in subnet number 2 by default. I can choose, these are the operating systems available today. I could choose Oracle Linux 7.5, or I could choose Windows Server if I want to, and it will go in and do everything as we need to do from a Windows perspective, and you would have a Windows Server running for you. At this point of time, I'm going to use Linux 7.5. Okay, I'm saying it's a virtual machine. I'm saying I want it to be, when it says, if you can see the options available here, it's 2.1, 2.2, 2.4, 2.8. What is the difference in 1 and 2? 2 is X7s, 1s are X5s, and the second digit is .1, .2, .4, .8. That's the number of OCPUs that you want on your server. So if I want to create, if I want to run an instance on 1.1, it'll allow me to do that. So I'm going to do 1.16, means I want to create a server with 16 CPUs running on an X5 machine. Okay, it's asking me what version of my, that I want to use. Right now for Linux 7.5, it has 4 image versions. I'll just use the latest one because it has all the patches and fixes. Now, as part of this workshop, we had provided you SSH files, and we had provided 2 files. One is a PPK file and a PUB file. Those are private key files that are typically used, that would be unique to each customer, but for the purpose of the demo, they do not need to be unique. So there were 2 files that were provided. One was a .pub and a .ppk file. You need to have that file dropped over here. So I'm going to go to Browse, Keys, and these are the 2 files I sent you, so shield.pub and so shield.ppk. I hope you have these files. So the combination of the public key and the private key is what gives you access to the instance. If you lose your private key after you've provided the public key as part of the creation of the instance, then you cannot access the instance. In fact, even Oracle cannot access the instance. It is completely private to the customer, and it is a unique key that is unique. So it's created by a random generation, and only you know how you created that random code. So I created this random key for the purpose of the demo, and that's what I sent to you. We do not choose any, I'm not doing any Terraform scripts as part of that. I'm just going to select, and I'm going to be putting this in my demo VCN. By default, since I selected availability domain 2, it told me it's going to put it in the public subnet that was in domain 2. Okay, it assigns a public IP address, and I say create instance. As you can see now, it has started creating my instance for me. Now this takes less than 5 minutes to create. And once it does that, then I can use an application like Putty, and I can access this environment, and that's what I will show you how to do. At this point of time, if anybody has any questions, they can ask before I go on to showing you the demo. So as you can see over here right now, it has created an instance. If you remember, we gave the CIDR code as 10.0.1/0/24. So it kept the same first 3 digits. It created a new server, 10.0.1.2. Okay, that's the private IP address that you would use within your own environment. That you would use access when you are accessing the server. But since we are doing this from an internet perspective, it has also created a public IP address. Obviously, we would not recommend you to open up your environments in your actual data centers to the internet. You don't have access. But since by default everything is deny, it's not such a big deal. But I would prefer creating private subnets for that. But in this purpose, I'm going to use the public IP address, which it has created over here as 129.146.140.189. So if I give it, I'm going to, as you see, it's already finished creating it. So now I'm going to go to Putty. So if you give me a second. So here I am in Putty right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my demo environment. I'm going to change the IP address to what I have right now. Okay. And then I'm going to show you what actually happens. Over here on the SSH side, you have an authorization key. Over here, you have to specify which key you are. Since we used shield.pub when we created the actual environment, you will create the appropriate PPK file that will be needed. So in this case, it's already there. Okay. And then I'll go back and I will say open. So it's going to try to open this server that I've created right now on the Oracle Cloud, and I'm going to open it. It's asking me a question on my other window, which I will say yes and bring it up. As you can see over here, there you go. I have logged into my server, and if you look over here, right, it's giving me, you can see the server name has an IP address of 10.0.1.2. The name of the server is created as demo.oraclevcn.com. Okay, and this has a private, this has a public IP address of 129.146.140.189, and it logs in as a user OPC, which is Oracle Public Cloud. Now, since this is our own server we've created on the cloud, I can actually access this instance by doing a sudo, and you go into root. Now you're logged in as root in your environment. And once you're on root, if you can check, if I do an yum update, no, you'll be actually able to see that it's actually able to access yum because it has access to the internet. So I'm able to run a yum command against a server that I just created. Now, just imagine if you did this today on your own data center, how long does it take you to get a new server that you want provisioned? This has a 16 CPU machine that you're running against that I got ready within less than 15 minutes. After talking and explaining all the details, I was still able to get an environment within less than 15 minutes ready, which is now I'm able to do anything and everything on this. Now, when I'm on this instance, and I have all the yum updates that I do, and I install all the packages. By default, none of the packages are installed because it gives you a bare metal server with nothing installed. You can install all the packages required for Oracle to run. You want to install, Dockers, containers, anything you want to do. How you want to run this Linux server is totally up to you. It becomes a server that you can access and do anything and everything. It's a compute environment with 16 CPUs that's running right now for you, and you could do whatever you want. Now you could install Oracle on this machine by using your Oracle database. Now, if it's a compute environment, what is one of the things that you're doing? You have to bring your own licenses, right? Because you are going to run your database. Your database, you could be running Enterprise Edition. You would need to bring your own licenses if you run your database on a compute environment like the way it is over here. Now, if you want licenses to be included, then that's what Oracle has come up with, something known as Database Cloud Service. And in that, what we will do is we will actually do a few more steps, get a database installed on a brand new server. And we'll do that as step number 2 right now. So let me give you some information of what Database Cloud Service is before I go on. So, this is doing its steps on the server. I hope each one of you who is actually accessing doing the workshop right now is actually able to has already created their own environment. So I'm going to go back to my presentation, and I'm going to talk about the Database Cloud Service. So with the Database Cloud Service, what Oracle does is when you say create a database under the Database Cloud Service, it creates a database for you on a server in which you specify how many CPUs you need. Just like we said 1.16, you just specify the number of CPUs you need, and it actually creates a database by default in the same infrastructure on which you created your compute today. But now it will create it as part of your DBCS service. So there are 4 editions of the Database Cloud Service that exist today. One is the Standard Edition, one is Enterprise Edition, Enterprise Edition High Performance, and Enterprise Edition Extreme Performance. Now you may ask me, what is the difference between these 4? So by default, when you bought an on-premise database license today, you bought a Standard Edition and you bought Enterprise Edition. Then if you wanted to use partitioning, or you wanted to use advanced security option or advanced compression option, you would have to purchase separate licensing for each one of this. And you would use named user licensing, or you would use a processor-based licensing, right? So in this situation, the licenses that you get, depending on what you buy, they automatically come by default. And I will show you that on the next slide. But you have different versions of the database today that are available that we could use to create a database on the DBCS cloud. Okay, but by default, the database gets created on an Oracle Linux environment as the operating system. And also, once that server is created, you can create your own Oracle homes on the same DBAS server as needed, and you get full control to do whatever you want at the host level. So this is what the cloud service packages provide. So if you take Standard Edition, it basically is Standard Edition. The only thing that comes by default in Standard Edition, which is not present in the Standard Edition on your on-premise, is the transparent data encryption. That is, the database by default has all your table spaces encrypted. In Oracle Cloud, if you use DBCS, your databases are encrypted by default. There is no licensing required for that. All your table spaces, all your data files by default are encrypted. Okay. Now, if you take the Enterprise Edition, you will get automatically data masking, diagnostic and tuning pack, and real application testing included as part of the enterprise edition. So you do not have to pay additional licensing for any one of those. Now you may ask, what happens if you have your own license? Then Oracle has something known as bring your own license, which I'll talk about after I finish this particular column. If you buy high performance, in addition to what you get to enterprise edition, you will get partitioning, advanced compression, advanced security, and all these different options that are there that they would come by default that you would be allowed to use. Now, by default, Oracle already has some of these things, right? They're automatically, you can use advanced compression today on your on-premise database, but are you allowed to use it if you do not have license? Absolutely not. You need to purchase licensing, and licensing is extremely expensive for an on-premise solution for all these things. Over here, they get included in your cloud cost. So if you are willing, if you are actually, there is a tremendous amount of cost saving just on licensing if you run your Oracle database on the Oracle Cloud. And then, of course, if you have extreme performance, you're allowed to use Active Data Guard rack and in-memory database as it comes automatically included as part of your licensing. Now remember, rack, obviously you'll create 2 VMs, 2 CPUs each, but the advantage, one of the things is right now, rack is not something that you can do on the other cloud services, or they're not certified. So, you can play around and try to get rack running, but rack actually works and is certified to be used only on the Oracle public cloud. Okay. Now, if you have your own licensing, then there's a slight different way in which the packaging comes over from the DBCS part of it. So standard packages, it gives you, bring your own license. Okay. You can, with enterprise high performance and extreme performance, you bring your own license, but you will get, this data masking, diagnostic and tuning pack, and real application testing is automatically included. Anything else you cannot use unless you had a license for it before. Now the advantage, so that's one of the things you remember. So if you had any one of these before, then those automatically anyway come over and you don't have to pay anything additional for it. But if you don't even, you just take your regular enterprise edition and you will get this data masking, subsetting, diagnostic. And so whatever you have over here, enterprise edition is what you'll select. So the price is really, there is no difference in the price between enterprise, high performance, and extreme performance if you bring your own license, because you're getting this by default. Anything other than that, you're bringing your license over. So when you're bringing your license over, there's no really, it doesn't matter what edition you select as part of DBCS. You can only use what you're licensed for. Plus the monthly cost is lower with bring your own license, because now you're only paying for the compute and for the automation. You're not paying for the license. If you're bringing a brand new environment, then that whatever monthly outgoing fee that you have for the cloud includes the licensing. So it's a slightly more than bring your own license. So that's one of the things that you have to, remember, that this is going to be a lower cost because you've already paid for licensing, so you're getting credits for it. That's the most important thing to remember. So you get a full service as needed. Okay, I've already provided this. You can do exactly the same thing, root access, enterprise manager, whatever you want to do, you can do exactly the same thing. Okay, and if you created a database on-premise, look at the number of steps that you would need to do just to get your database up and running. Provision the server, provision the storage, provision all the SSL certificates, networking, everything. If you just do DBCS, you'll see it'll be basically 5 steps and you'll be done. And I'll show you that it takes less than 45 minutes. So we're not going to wait for 45 minutes, but I'll show you the process of how easy it is to get a database up and running on the cloud. So this is what the steps that we will do. We could configure backups as needed, and then we'll be able to get a DBCS instance ready to use. So I'm going to go back again to the demo environment and show you how we can do that. So we're here, as we saw, we created this environment. So this environment is now there in the list of instances. So we have a demo instance, and I had one already created before. Now I'm going to go to database. Okay, and I'm going to say create a database system. So when I create a database system, again, I'm going to say I want to create a database with the name demo. Where do I want to create it? I created the previous one in availability domain 2. So I create this one in availability domain 3. Okay, now it's asking me a shape. So here again, it's asking me what it's going to be. So when it's in shape, it's asking me on what server do you want to install this? So do you want it on an X7 or an X5? So if it's 2, it's X7. If it's 1, it's X5. And how many CPUs you want to run it on. So if I say I want to run it on an X7 with 8 CPUs, this is what it is. Now you can specify the number of nodes if you want, if you're going to do rack. So I'm just going to say one node. I'm going to specify whether it is standard edition or enterprise edition. I'm going to say enterprise edition. So when I say enterprise edition, it'll give me data masking, real application testing, and tuning and diagnostic back automatically included. And then what should the size of my database? From a storage, how much space do you want to allocate? By default, it'll create a database for you, but it won't create all your other table space. It'll create your AUX, system table space. It'll create your basic database, just like you do today when you run installer. But at the same time, when you want to create your rest of your applications, table spaces, and everything, you need to allocate storage to it. So you can specify how much storage I want. So I'm going to say, give me 1 terabyte of storage space, right? Now, again, I said there are 2 types of options, license included or bring your own license. So I'm going to do license included. It really, from this perspective, it really doesn't matter from an install perspective, but from your billing perspective, it matters, correct? Because when you're doing your own license, then you're getting your universal credits as needed. Again, over here, I'm going to select the key, which I'm going to select my public key again as needed. Now I'm going to specify that I'm going to be putting this in the demo VCN. I'm going to be putting this in availability domain 3. What is my, I can provide whatever host name I want to give to this one. So if I give again host name, again, I can also say demo. So it's going to be on host demo. I will give a different name. I do not want to give the same name. I'm going to say demo for DBCS. My database name, I'm going to say demo. Select version. You saw there are 4 different versions which I showed you that you could do. So I'm going to say I want to have a 12.102. If you want to create a pluggable database, it asks you whether you want to create a pluggable or not. Over here, you need to specify the passwords. So I'm just going to specify, it says it should be 2 uppercase, 2 lowercase. See, look, it's pretty complicated. 2 uppercase, 2 lowercase, 2 special characters, and 2 numeric characters. And the special characters allowed only are underscore, pound, and dash. So I cannot use any other special characters. So hopefully, yes, gave me a green, which means I selected the right password. And it's matching the password above. Now you can also, at this point of time, say whether you want an automatic backup. If you do an automatic backup, then it will actually create object storage for you. It will automatically run RMAN scripts against this, and it will store them in the object storage that's there on OCI. Now you could specify whether, just like when you run installer, right? It would ask you whether you want an OLTP environment or a DSS environment. It's asking you this. Specify your character set that you need. So I could say AL UTF-16 or AL 32 UTF-8. You could specify what is your national character set that you want to use, and you say create launch database system. Host name can contain only letters and hyphens. So I'm going to say display name network host name over here. I'm going to say dash DBCS, and you say launch DB, and it starts creating your database for you. And if you look over here, it'll actually start telling you on which server. So it'll first start creating a server for you. So whatever we did before with the OCI environment to create the compute environment, now it's doing the same thing, but it's also installing the database on top of that with all the licenses automatically included as part of your deal. So that is where some of the benefits are. Plus it's auto managing. So, now it's automatically going to create your RMAN scripts for you and all that. So even when you created a compute, you still have to do all the manual steps, right? To create a database, run installer, run your RMAN scripts, create your shutdown startup. This does everything for you. So this will first create a compute environment. After creating the compute environment, it will install the database on this environment. And once that is done, then you can actually access this database just like you're accessing a database from your own desktop. You could connect to SQL Developer, and you will specify the name. You'll specify the connect string as needed, and you will get the IP address over here. So we'll obviously use the public IP if I'm connecting from my own machine. If you have VPNs and you've set up the VPN correctly to your cloud, then you can connect your VPN and use your private IP address as needed. Obviously, we are not, this is just from a demo purposes, so I'm trying to connect from my desk, but we would be able to use SQL Developer if you need to install, to log into this database. So at this point of time, the database is, it's going to take about 45 minutes for this to run, but within 45 minutes, it will be ready. So I do not think we will wait for 45 minutes, but what I wanted to give you is once this database gets created, you are pretty much accessing this database using SQL Plus or SQL Developer from your desktop. That's all you really need to do. And you also have a server which you can log into just like you did for the previous compute environment over here, where I can log in as root and then run whatever you're doing. The only thing that will be different is when you do a PS-F and you do a grep Oracle, you will actually have the Oracle database running. You'll have an Oracle user where you will be able to sudo to. All that stuff is not there right now because this was only a pure compute environment that we created, while the DBCS will create a complete environment for you, including the database. So other than that, there's, from the workshop perspective, I hope you're trying out all these things and doing some of these steps yourself. I am not able to see what you are doing, but I am presuming that you are able to actually log in and do some of the steps that you are, that I showed you how to do over here. If not, as I said, please use this demo that is being recorded, and you could actually use this as part of your, learning process to how to use the Oracle Cloud. And as you can see how easy it is, and Oracle is awesome on the Oracle Cloud, and absolutely no question about that. And beyond that, so you just said we already provided the keys. We said configure the backups, and there you go. We are all set. So now this is my contact details. If you have any questions, feel free to directly email me. If you have general inquiries about the Oracle Cloud, please send information to info@smartdogservices.com. And if you have any questions, I do not see any questions being asked. So if you still have questions, we have time. If not, then we will end the webinar at this point of time. Just wanted to show you right now what's the status. So it's still doing, as you can see, the provisioning. And it is going to create storage for 1 terabyte. Total storage is 1,401.48, so 1.5 terabytes. That includes all the Oracle homes and system table space, sysAUX table space, and everything that you need. So that's it. We are pretty much all done. If there's anything else you need from me, please ping me on the question box. Otherwise, thank you very much, and it was a pleasure. Audrey, is there anything you want to say before we close?
Not now. Great job, Shashil. And in terms of reaching back out to any of us, have our contact information on the actual email itself, and I'm happy to either connect you to anyone from our team or also to continue the conversation with Oracle. So feel free to reach out at any point. Thank you, Shashil.
Thank you.